Marvel Snap cards undergo a lot of changes, from either the data mine to its actual release, or maybe some balance changes along the way. And it's always going to have an impact on its viability in the meta. Now, I wanted to take a look back because I do a lot of star ratings on this channel because I think it's a lot of fun. I like to speculate how I think the card is going to perform before it's actually released. So that's what I have here. I have 3 tiers of star ratings, and we're going to have a look at what I gave these cards and how my opinion has changed into its current star rating. Now, I'm looking specifically at the months of January and February. We're going to look at those 2 months of cards, and if you guys like this series, then I will continue it, so definitely give a thumbs up. And if you like star ratings, data mine content, definitely snap subscribe because I am on top of those. Now, for the star ratings, so the data mines, whenever they're released, a patch goes live, and then, the data miners get to work. I like to put that content out right away. It's what I'm most interested about. I like to speculate whether that card will be strong or not, even though it might change later down the line. So this is a very fast take. Within a couple hours of them being announced, I'm going to have a video out with a star rating. So it's very preliminary. The original star rating, however, is when the card is officially announced by the Marvel Snap channel. They do a video where they highlight the 4 cards and they say, this is when they're going to come out. Enjoy. So then I'll do a star rating then to preview which cards I think are going to be the strongest or weakest in that given month. The current star rating refers to right now, how I think the card is performing at this given time. Now, all the star ratings are going to kind of be difficult to evaluate if you're looking at just the card right now, right? It's based on a certain point of time when the card was different. For instance, look at our saber-toothed tiger right here. Is that the saber-tooth you are familiar with? No, I don't think so. Because ZABU used to be a 5/7. If this is in your hand when you discard a card, put that card back and discard this instead. That's crazy. So one thing you guys got to understand with these cards is that the meta has changed, right? So certain builds or archetypes were stronger than others that might exist right now today. So to give you a quick example, when this card was data mined, MODOK was not actually in the game. So Hella decks were a little bit step weaker. I think MODOK really helped that archetype because it's just a straight up discard the whole hand, play Hella after, not too shabby. So at the time, that's what I thought. I thought, okay, well, ZABU would work with Hella. It would protect her, and that'd be great. That'd be really cool, actually. I love the idea of discard protection. But that's kind of all it's doing. You don't really want to play a 5/7 that has no effect, and then, maybe you protect your Hella, but maybe you don't even draw this in time and you still ended up discarding her. Or maybe you never even really had to protect her because your line of play worked out. It means that you don't have to run Invisible Woman to protect that card, but otherwise, I don't know, it's a bit tricky. And then even if you did have MODOK, you can't guarantee it's going to protect Hela. So yeah, I don't know. So at the time, this just didn't seem all that great, but I thought, hey, maybe it could give life to that archetype, so we'll give it a 3-star rating. Well, fast forward to January when this was the season pass card, and it was a 3/2 ongoing. Your 4-cost cards cost 2 less. Such an insane ability. Honestly, my 4.5-star rating seems a little passive. I feel like that is an easy 5-star rating. It was probably my first month of doing the star ratings month to month, so I was like, maybe I'll hold back a little bit. Should have been a 5. Yeah, ZABU was insane. It was destroying the meta. There was a lot of annoying things like Spider-Man and Absorbing Man that were just super toxic, but overall pretty much just throw a bunch of 4-cost cards like Shang-Chi, White Queen even. There was all kinds. Every 4-cost card got a huge buff when this was released. We were even seeing Crossbones in the meta. It was wild time to be a Snap player. And yeah, but that did not last very long because then ZABU was changed the way that the card, and its current star rating, I'm still giving it a 5. I still think it's a bonkers ability, and people are still running this in loads of decks, but it's now a 2/2. Your 4-cost cards get 1 less. So he actually became cheaper, but with less of a crazy ability, less discounts being dished out. So anyways, I'm still giving ZABU a 5-star card until they maybe change it in the future, but I think it is here to stay. It is always going to be meta relevant. The next card that came out in January was SAURON. So SAURON hasn't actually changed. A 3/3 on reveal, remove the abilities from all ongoing cards in your hand and deck. So I'm just leaving it at 3 stars at the current star rating. I when I saw this, I thought it'd be a 3-star card. Originally, it was a 3-star card, and I still think it's a 3-star card. It does what it wants to do, but it's very niche and it only really fits in one archetype. Maybe that archetype will, perform better than, some other times. Like, for instance, the Shuri meta, this was doing pretty well to, be a backup plan to remove the ability of Red Skull. But overall, you'd want to do other things. You'd want to, like, Shuri into Red Skull and then Taskmaster, and then you didn't really have time to play Sauron in a lot of instances. But if you could, that was the dream. That was the dream line of play. But anyways, I think Sauron's just a good card. It's just a really well-balanced card that works in its own archetype, and I appreciate it. So you get 3 stars, my dude. Then you got Dazzler. So check this out. This is very fascinating. So Dazzler used to be in the data mines a 4/4 ongoing if you have 4 cards at each location plus 8 power. So if you fulfilled the condition, it would be a 4/12. That's a lot of power. That's pretty significant and probably would have really helped the original Dazzler. So I gave her 3 stars. I thought, hey, you know what? With Ultron and those things existing, 12 power for 4, that's got to be somewhat relevant. That might work, right? Well, then they released her and they took 2 points of power away from her ability. She became a 4/4 ongoing if you have 4 cards at each location plus 6. And at the time, I was like, yeah, okay, that's going to kind of hurt the star rating. I don't know if it's going to be that easy to me. It seems like a lot of work. I'm going to give it 2 stars. And, it was kind of a bummer. I feel like they could have left the plus 8 power and just see what happens. Maybe it would have been crazy with like Onslaught to get it to like 20, but I think that's fun. You have to meet the condition of filling your entire board, which is cool, very cool, but tough to do, especially with locations not really allowing you sometimes, which would really hinder your game plan. But of course, the devs realized this and they decided to completely rework the card to the way that you might know it today. So Dazzler is now a 3/2 ongoing plus 2 power for each location that's full on your side. I like this change a lot, but I still haven't seen the card. I tried making it work in like some Surfer decks or maybe just some like Flood the Board decks. It still struggles with those same challenges. And now getting it to like a 3/4, 3/6 is just a bit underwhelming. You have to put in so much work to get to that power threshold that I find this card just ends up falling off, or you just remove it from your deck. It's also countered by, Enchantress, Echo now, if you've ever seen her, and then also Rogue. So like there's a few things to look out for, and then maybe it's not worth the payoff for all the effort that you put in. So I'm giving Dazzler the same old star rating at 2. Then there was Shanna the She-Devil. Now this card has changed a lot too. It's interesting to go back to these January cards because they had a lot of changes. Shanna was originally a 3/4 when you discard a card from your hand, move this to a random location. What the heck was that all about, dude? I still don't understand how you could properly make this work. Like, is there some kind of Craven MODOK strategy out there that I don't know about? I don't know. At the time, I gave it 1 star. And I'm pretty glad that I gave this version of Shanna 1 star because I still stand by that this is just wacky. Like, I don't really see where this works, but maybe you guys let me know. And then a 3/4 stat line is kind of underwhelming too for a super offbeat ability. I feel like it easily could have been a 3/5 with this ability and still probably wouldn't have gotten played. But of course, Shanna did not last like this. She eventually became the way you know her on reveal. Add a random 1-cost card to each location, but she was a 4/2, so not a good stat line. Maybe you could do some Mr. Negative shenanigans, but the idea was you'd get enough value from the 1-cost cards being spread out. The problem is that could be Blade to ruin your big, turn 5 or 6 play, or really just ruin your setup, or it could be 0 to make it really awkward to play cards next turn, or just a lot of other things, like even Squirrel Girl, and then squirrels get spread out and lock your board up. There's just a lot that can go wrong. The RNG is a little bit too heavy. There's a lot of good instances, don't get me wrong, but if it's Ebony Mon and you're losing at that location, you just lost it permanently. So it can be a bit difficult, and it's just completely decimated by Killmonger. So at the time, I gave it 1 star. But you know what? I have to change my star rating because right now I think she's a 2-star card because she was buffed. She went to a 4/4. And I think that little bit of power really helped the card. And now you can, usually get like a significant amount of power. You're probably looking at an average amount of power of like 8 to 10 range from the 3 1-drops that you're responding. It's just the board lock that is tricky and why I'm keeping her at a low star rating. Maybe we'll see some Shanna the She-Devil love in the future, but I think as more 1-drops are introduced to the game, it kind of helps her. It's always going to kind of affect her card in some way or another. All right, next up is the craziest one I have for you guys here. So it's Shadow King. Okay, so Shadow King was a 6/4 on reveal, destroy all other cards with 2 or less power. What the heck, Shadow King? That's wild. So you're Iron Man, see ya. Just anything else, I don't even know. Whatever's got 2 or less power, the Mystique combos, the Patriots, all those things are gone. You're Wong, gone. All these things. Like, I feel like this would be so nuts to cheat this out, right? Like with Wave into Shadow King to get these destroys off, and then you play Death probably for free on turn 6 plus whatever else you got cooking. Like, there's a lot of ways to make this work, and I thought it'd be nuts, so I gave it 5 stars. But of course, Shadow King didn't actually stay like this. He was changed to look like this, a 4/3, not the one in your collection right now, right? It was changed a little bit later on, and I gave this Shadow King 4 stars. Man, yeah. But dude, you were supposed to be great. You were supposed to save the meta. You were the chosen one. But you failed us. You failed us. At the time, there was a lot of Angela. There was a lot of ZABU. There was a lot of all these crazy things. Even Shuri became really relevant. Doing that deck started popping off. And this was supposed to be the counter. This was supposed to stop that stuff. But it didn't. Set all cards here to their original base power. It was just too expensive. People didn't want to play it. Even though there was the ZABU strategies, nobody was trying. So it just kind of fell by the wayside, and the 4-star rating was probably a little bit inflated. I wanted to pick this card up when it was released. I decided not to, and I was pretty happy for it. It didn't start seeing play though until recently, which is why I'm giving it a 3-star rating in the current edition of Shadow King, because it became a 3 cost. Once it became a 3 cost, it was so much better. It didn't hurt as much to play this card, and there's a lot of cards that gain power over time. We're looking at Sunspot, Nebula, Kitty Pryde. There's a lot of things that are growing in power, and Shadow King completely shuts them down, and not a lot of people see him coming. Not to mention how he works with Silver Surfer decks. So there's a lot going for Shadow King now. I think he's always going to actually have a place in the meta. He's always going to be kind of relevant, because if those cards that grow in power become, strong, then Shadow King steps up to save the day. And he's finally kind of that card we had hoped he had been back in January. But he's still 3 stars for me until there's a few other crazy growing in power cards. I'm going to keep him at 3, but I honestly could have bumped that up to 4. I just don't know. He's not the best tech card in the game, right? There's a lot that do a little bit better. Then we got MODOK. So MODOK has not changed. MODOK has been the same old MODOK since it was originally data mined, to discard your hand. 5/8. And I don't know why, but I gave this a 2-star rating. I was wrong. Let me tell you, in the data mines, I was wrong about MODOK. Honestly, I can't tell you. I guess discard just wasn't all that popular at the time. Or maybe I was like, why would you want to do that with your swarms? But you do that with your swarms. You do that with your APOC. You get the Dracula out there. You get to play all the swarms in your America Chavez, and then your APOC's the only one in hand. Like, there's a lot of power to be had. MODOK enables so much for the archetype. So that's why I changed him to be a 4-star card before he was launched in the February season. He was the season pass card. And then my current edition is still the same, 4 stars. I don't think he's like a 5-star card, because anytime you're so narrowed into one, niche archetype, it's tough to justify if that archetype isn't at the top of the meta, which discard really isn't. It's always kind of been, bottom of tier 1, tier 2 kind of range. So I think he's a staple for those decks, which is why he's got a 4-star rating, but I'm not going to bump him up to a 5 just yet. But good for MODOK for always being the same, being loyal, being a 5/8. Good for him. Look at him. He looks adorable. I can't wait for this variant. All right, next up is Ghost. So this is the most wild one, okay? This is like, when this card was announced, all the content creators, all the people online were saying Ghost is going to be insane. It just seemed wild. It seemed like there was a lot of potential for this card, which is why I gave it a 4-star rating. And Ghost has not changed. She's been the same, okay? So at a 4-star rating, I thought, oh man, if you get to make them reveal first, you can counter with a bunch of stuff. Your Shang-Chi is going to be more reliable. Your Killmongers, all these tech counter cards are going to be so much more reliable. Easy, GG, I'm going to win the game all the time. But that obviously did not become the case. And I stuck by my data mine rating with a 4-star rating before her release when it was announced in the February season. And then when she was launched, I think a lot of people picked her up and regretted it very, very quickly. A lot of people went online, were like, nope, this card's trash, don't do it. Now today, I'm giving her a 2-star rating. A deck was discovered, a Valkyrie deck, where you want to use Ghost and then you play a bunch of cards. Maybe you have Ant-Man in there or something and you play Valkyrie so that you completely decimate your opponent's side of that board. But the Ant-Man will get the ongoing power and prevail, and then you'll win that location. It's really helped out with Ghost. Like, Ghost really helps Valkyrie plays because you want to make sure that your opponent's stuff has been played so that you can ruin it and put it to 3 power. For quite literally that reason alone, I gave it 2 stars right now. Otherwise, it probably is a 1-star card, which is crazy because it's a 1/2 with maybe not a bad effect, but sometimes the effect is actually a downside. So that's a little bit risky right there. But for Valkyrie shenanigans, I'm going to give it 2 stars. But yeah, this card, it was rough for people early on. All right, next up is Stature. So Stature was the same from its Datamine version to when it was actually launched, but it's slightly different today. But I give Stature 4 stars. Anytime something's going to be, discounted to 1, it just seems like it's going to be good. Even though it was a little bit niche and Black Bolt was regarded as one of the worst cards in the game, I still felt like, maybe she'll find a way. I'm a big Moon Knight fan. Maybe Moon Knight will be the one. No, of course, it ended up being Black Bolt. But a 5/7 costs 1 if your opponent discarded a card from their hand this game. Doesn't even matter if your opponent's running discard or not. If they do, bonus. But otherwise, you're playing back Black Bolt on 5. So that turn 6, you can play your Stature for 1, which is 7 power, and then a bunch of other things. This deck became super meta relevant, but not at the time of release. It took a month or 2 for people to figure out that Stature is fantastic, Black Bolt can actually work, and the deck came together a few months after this card's release. So on the data mines, I gave 4 stars. Pretty happy that I did that, but I backed off a little bit. I thought, I don't know, maybe this won't work because Black Bolt's not very good. So I went to the 3 stars. I fell under the pressure. But then, of course, I'm going to bump her back up to a 4-star rating. Even though it was changed to a 5/6, this is still a strong card, guys. And especially if there's more cards like Silver Samurai coming out soon that are going to help out by discarding cards from your opponent's hand, she's going to continue to get value, and a 1/6 is just nuts, especially if you can set it up for the last turn. So Stature is still a super good card, better than originally thought, as good as the Datamine prediction. Lastly, we have Kang. Now, there is a lot of back and forth when it comes to Kang the Conqueror, and I took a lot of heat for this card because of my original, right there, star rating. And I made a whole video about whether I thought he was a token trap or not, because he is a big bad card. He was actually the first one outside of the 2 originals to be announced as a brand new join in the game big bad, which caught a lot of people's attention. They wanted to pick up this card because it's going to be 6,000 tokens for a very long time, still is today, despite coming out in February. But in the data mines, I thought, wow, that seems wild. You get to see what your opponent did, then restart the trade. That's great. I'm going to give it 4 stars. But then I started to think about the card a little bit more, and I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know if this is actually going to be all that hype, especially because you don't get to draw another card. I thought by default you would draw another card no matter what. No, it's only if you top deck Kang will you redraw, which is kind of a bummer. I think they could make that small change and that would make him a lot more viable. But a lot of people are like, the information is insane. You get to save cubes. That's the thing I hear all the time. But I swear, I wish I was keeping track, because I swear if Kang the Conqueror is played against me, I usually win more cubes than I would have, because they get a false sense of confidence in what I'm going to do. And then if I'm playing Kang the Conqueror, I usually end up retreating, or if I decide to stick in because I like what I see, I lose cubes. On average, it feels that way. Now, the stats in a lot of, the Snap.fan trackers or Untapped GG, like these places that, maintain those stats, they show the decent cube rates for this card. So maybe it's just a personal opinion of mine, but I'm still keeping them at 2 stars. I could have put this at 1 star, to be honest with you. I am just not a fan of Kang the Conqueror. I think he needs to be changed slightly to become a little bit more viable. He should thrive in Conquest, yet none of the top Conquest lists have Kang. Or he should thrive on ladder, but none of those top decks have him. So I don't know, but I love this art. I do like the card. It's pretty fun, but it was overhyped. You got to watch out with the big bads. Just because they're going to cost more doesn't mean they're going to be better, although some of them are pretty nuts. So that is January and February. Those are the startings that I gave. I definitely got some wrong. This data mine to current was definitely a huge shift. Ghost was a huge shift, but I got a couple right, at least seemingly so. That's just my opinions. All of this is just my opinion, and I think it's just fun to speculate and talk about. So let me know if you guys like this video and you want to see me do more the rest of the months. We could do March, April next, and eventually we'll creep our way to Legion, where I was probably the most wrong I've ever been about any card. And I will always admit to that, hold myself accountable. So anyways, thank you so much for watching, everybody, and I'll catch you guys next time.